The jungle whispered in 1,000 voices, but tonight they all spoke of fear. Jarrow moved low through the underbush, the sharp sting of sweat in his eyes. Around him the others crept in silence, hunters, like him, men who had faced prowling jaguars, venomous snakes, and the relentless force of nature itself without hesitation. They were not chosen for muscle or speed alone, but for their steadiness, their quiet courage when the shadows deepened and the air grew still. And yet tonight, even these brave few carried fear like a second skin. This was no ordinary hunt. The jungle felt wrong. The usual chorus of birdsong and insect hum was absent. No crickets chirped. No frogs croaked from the wet gullies. Even the wind, which usually played lazily throughout the treetops, had stilled, as if unwilling to move further. A heavy, breathless silence hung over everything, pressing down like a weight. It wasn't just quiet, it was unnatural, as though the forest itself was afraid to make a sound. They moved along a path, but not one marked by footprints or bent branches. Instead they followed a trail of lifelessness. Where the Kawahari passed, the jungle fell into silence. An eerie pocket of stillness left behind. That void was their only guide. For generations the Kawahari had stalked the edge of their lives. First a man vanished during a routine forage, then a family disappeared from their shelter. Later entire sections of the tribe were swallowed without warning. No blood, no struggle, just absence. Some elders whispered of a curse, of a punishment sent from forgotten gods. Others spoke of a guardian spirit, awakened by some unknown wrong. But Jarrow knew the truth. He had seen it. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to know it wasn't a myth. Not a campfire tale to scare children or a legend crafted to deep wanderers close to the village. It was real, and it had taken his sister. He remembered the scream, the silence after, the helplessness, and the long slow burn of knowing he could do nothing. That night had never left him, and so he had waited, not just to settle a score, not even for justice. He needed to understand. He needed to know what the Kawahari was and why it chose them. Before the Kawahari became a myth, it was a shadow in Jarrow's past. He had just been a child, his sister Mirren, who was 2 years older, bold, fearless, and full of restless fire. Her laughter rang through the trees like wind chimes caught in a storm. She was the kind of wild the jungle understood. She climbed the tallest trees, crossed rivers without flinching, and whispered stories to the moon. She made the forest a place of wonder, and Jarrow, wide-eyed and breathless, followed wherever she led. They had their own world, hidden paths, sacred spots, names for stars that only they knew. Everything shivered with magic when they were together, until the night they followed the silence. It began to whisper. "Did you hear that?" Mirren said. Suddenly still, Jarrow listened. No birds, no insects, not even the wind in the canopy. Just hush. The stillness, she said, her eyes wide. "Let's follow it." Barefoot and curious, they slipped away, vanishing into the darkness beneath the trees. The jungle was thick with mist, the kind that muffled sound and swallowed light. Each step deeper brought a strange stillness, like the world was folding in around them. They then approached a rocky clearing, a place neither of them had ever seen. The ground was soft, sunken. Vines twisted like veins across the soil. Ancient stones lay scattered like broken monuments. It felt untouched, forgotten by time. And then it appeared. It didn't arrive, it was simply there. Towering over them in the centre of the clearing, 12 feet tall, with limbs too long for its body, and a hunched, uneven spine that rose into ridges. Its skin looked like stone slick with rain, but it moved like muscle beneath water. Its head was bulbous, eyes deep set and black, holes that drank in the world. They quickly realised they were right in its lair. It didn't breathe, it didn't blink, it just watched. Jarrow froze. Mirren stepped forward as if drawn, one step, then another, and then nothing. She didn't scream, she didn't fall, she didn't run. She just ceased. No flash of light, no sound. One moment she was there, the next, gone. Jarrah stood in that stillness, trembling, the jungle pressing in around him. That was the night the Kawahari became real, and the night he lost everything. Jarrah couldn't move. The Kawahari didn't even glance at him. He returned alone. The search parties went out at dawn. Torches in hands and weapons ready, they called Mirren's name until their voices gave out. They combed the jungle for days, through thickets and gullies, across rivers and ridgelines. But there was nothing. No footprints, no torn cloth, not even a broken twig. Just silence. When Jarrah told them what he had seen, they didn't believe him. Some said he was in shock, others said he was lying to hide something darker. The elders took him aside, their faces like stone, and warned him never to speak of it again. Forget the place, they told him. Forget what you think you saw, forget her. But he couldn't. Every day, every hour he remembered. He remembered her last step, the way her hand reached slightly forward, fingers parted, the way she vanished without a sound, without resistance, as if she had walked into the breath of some god and been swallowed whole. He couldn't forget that. He didn't speak of it again, and they asked, but he carried it with him, always. He took a smooth river stone and carved her name into it, letter by letter, with a flint blade until his fingers bled. He strung it on a cord of bark and wore it around his neck. It was the weight of memory, of promise. He grew older, learned to hunt, to track, to move through the jungle without a sound, but every path, every step carried the echo of that night. One day he told himself he would return to that place. One day he would find what no one else could, and when he did, he would bring her home, no matter what the Kawahari truly was. Now a man, Jarrah moved through the jungle with purpose. For 3 days, he and his hunting party had followed the silence. There were no footsteps, no broken branches, no scent to track, only stillness. A strange, unnatural absence where the jungle should have buzzed and breathed with life. Every time they stepped into one of those pockets, voids where no bird sang, where no insect dared to move, they knew they were closer. The others grew uneasy. The strongest among them kept their voices low, their weapons tight in hand. They had hunted jaguar, serpent, even man, but this was different. The forest itself seemed to flinch from what they pursued, but Jarrah felt no fear, only the dull pressure of memory, the ache that never left him. He had waited years for this, trained for it, lived for it. The Kawahari was real. He had seen it, felt its presence, lost to it. Now he moved not for vengeance, but for truth. Every silent glade, every patch of lifeless moss whispered of the past, of her. He would follow the silence to the end wherever it led, and if the Kawahari waited in the dark, this time he would not run. That night the stillness grew absolute. Even the sound of their own breath felt too loud, too wrong. The jungle held its silence like a secret, and then they found it. A clearing swallowed by time, moss-covered stone walls, once proud, had collapsed into the earth, tangled in the roots of ancient trees. Nature had tried to erase this place, but something lingered, carvings barely visible, etched ghost-like patterns into the worn stone, symbols that hinted at a language long lost or never meant for human eyes. In the centre stood the Kawahari. It did not move. It did not need to. It loomed like a statue, tall and stiff, as if carved from silence itself. Its skin, no longer described as feathers, shimmered in the moonlight, not with colour, but with the absence of it. It swallowed light, bent it, erased it. Its eyes, if they could be called that, turned towards them, slowly, deliberately, empty, watching, endless. But it wasn't alone. Around it lay objects, relics of their lives interrupted. Not bones, not trophies, human things. A cracked pair of reading glasses, a child's leather shoe, a pocket watch that still ticked, a rusted space helmet with a fractured visor, a faded photograph of a ship at sea, a silver locket, a red toy car with one steering wheel missing. Hundreds of items, scattered like memories, ancient and modern, mundane and impossible. Some belonged to their time, others to no time at all. The hunters stared, stunned. Jarrow stepped forward, eyes scanning the field of forgotten things. This wasn't a creature, it was a collector of moments, of people, of lives. And it had taken more than his sister. It had taken across centuries, across worlds. Each item was laid out deliberately, carefully, like offerings at a shrine, or part of a collection. Jarrow stepped slowly, eyes scanning the objects, each one placed with intent. Some were clean, almost new. Others bore the wear of time, weathered and cracked. All of them meant something to someone, once. No remains, Jarrow murmured. No bodies. Then where do they go? Whispered Talon. His voice barely more than a breath, eyes wide with fear. The Kawahari moved. Only slightly. A shift of weight, a subtle tilt to the head. But it was enough. The air itself began to change. A low pulse rose from the ground, like a heartbeat buried deep within the earth. Slow, measured, felt more than heard. It travelled through their feet, into their chests, and lingered on their skulls. The forest darkened, not from the absence of light, but from something deeper, like the world itself was shrinking inward. The ruins shimmered faintly as though caught between layers of reality, and then the memories began. A vibration filled the air, not a sound but a sensation. Low, resonant, ancient. The relics trembled, each one humming in sympathy. Light rippled across the clearing, heatless and cold at once. A breeze came and reversed direction. Time hesitated. Jarrow saw his breath fog the air. Though the night was warm, then it froze in place. He reached for his spear, but his hand moved like it was submerged in syrup, heavy, slow. Around them the jungle shuttered. Leaves blinked in and out of existence, branches twitched, paused, reversed, light flickered like a flailing flame. Sound came in fragments, echoes from other moments. Time itself was unravelling, and the Kawahari was at the centre of it all, watching, welcoming. Reality rippled like disturbed water. Then in perfect silence the flood of memory surged. Talon clutched his temples, groaning softly as if something inside his mind had been cracked open. Another hunter staggered back and collapsed, eyes wide, gasping at visions only he could see. Jarrow stood frozen, watching as relics pulsed with invisible energy, each one a key to a story never meant to be remembered. Images flooded his thoughts, not his own, not from any world he knew. A woman floated in the void of space, wires threaded through her skin like veins. Her eyes glowed with data, her thoughts transmitted in pulses of light, singing across satellites like a digital lullaby. A fire roared somewhere in the dark, but it did not burn. Instead, it whispered, words in forgotten tongues, truths too vast for speech. Figures stood inside it, motionless, listening, unafraid. Then another place, a temple. But unlike any temple of stone or wood, it floated or perhaps shifted. A cube, impossibly smooth, flickering through shapes and made Jarrow's head ache to comprehend. It existed in more than one space, more than one time. 12 dimensions at once. Its doors both open and closed, forever and never. Jarrow blinked, and the images vanished, but not with the weight of them. He looked at the Kawahari, realization dawning like a distant storm. It wasn't a monster, not in the way they thought. It was a vessel, a bridge, and the items around it weren't trophies. They were echoes of lives taken, yes, but also of places, ideas, memories, gateways, and it was opening. Memories were alive. They didn't drift or whisper, they struck, pressing into Jarrow like snow on bare skin. Cold and blinding, his breath caught in his throat as visions tore through him, faster than thought, sharper than pain. He saw the death of suns, giant stars collapsing inward, screaming in colours the human eye could never perceive. He saw the birth of sentient stars, their light pulsing in thought, entire galaxies shaped by their will. Civilizations bloomed like fire across worlds, then crumbled just as quickly. Cities suspended in gas clouds, beings of crystal and song, languages made of shifting light. Empires rose, flourished, warred, and vanished before their names could be spoken. Jarrow trembled, knees nearly buckling. His mind felt stretched, scraped by the raw weight of impossible knowledge. These weren't just visions, they were experiences, lived by others, now bleeding into him. Time had no meaning here. Reality bent. Past and future danced in the same breath. He wasn't meant to see this, wasn't meant to hold this, and still the Kawahari stood silent, watching, not feeding, not hunting, revealing, as if asking, "Do you understand now?" Jarrow gasped but said nothing, because somehow he did, and through it all the Kawahari watched. It did not blink, it did not breathe, it simply was, vast and alien, its body shifting subtly with a rhythm not bound to flesh or bone. Its skin resembled polished stone, slick with rain, layered in plates that moved like they were floating just above the surface. Light bent strangely around it, warping and refracting, never quite touching its form. Vast translucent membranes like living glass. Within them shimmered shapes and lines, markings that resembled symbols, but refused to stay still. They shifted as Jarrow looked at them, rearranging, rewriting themselves with every glance. Glyphs that seemed carved from light and shadow both. Glyphs that hummed. The sound wasn't loud, but it resonated in his chest, as if the symbols themselves were speaking, not in words but in meaning. They carried weight, intention, a language not meant for mouths but for memory. Jarrow's breath caught. He could not read them, but he felt them, each one brushing against something ancient within him, revealing even more of the shifting script. It was not just watching, it was showing him something, and waiting, and through it all, the Kawahari watched. It did not blink, it did not breathe, it simply existed, immense and silent, an impossible shape carved from a nightmare. Its body glistened with a wet sheen, skin slick and dark like rivers of stone after rain, not armoured but alive, flexing, rippling, a surface that pulsed faintly with its own rhythm, scales covered in uneven rows, some as large as leaves, others fine as ash, catching the moonlight with dull flashes. It was not beautiful, it was not grotesque, it was other. Its arms unfolded slowly, not feathers, not glass, but leathery membranes stretched wide, thin and sinewy, marked with veins that throbbed faintly between the skin. When they opened fully, they hissed faintly against the air, like wet leather peeled apart. The air grew heavier. Jarrow felt it press against his chest, a humid, cloying pressure that made breathing feel like drowning. The creature said nothing, yet its presence screamed, not in sound, but in sensation, a deep vibration in the bones, in the teeth, as though the world itself was straining to hold the weight of it. Still, it watched, not with curiosity, not with hunger, but with awareness. And Jarrow understood whatever the Kawahari was, it did not exist to kill. It existed to show, and it was not done yet. Understanding came not in speech or vision, but as a presence inside the chest, as if another intelligence had leaned in and whispered a truth into the marrow of Jarrow's bones. The vanished had not died, they had been taken, chosen, not in cruelty but in care, not in theft but in preservation. Jarrow collapsed to his knees. He could no longer tell what was real, what was his own memory, and what had been placed in him. He saw Mirren now, clearer than ever before, not as the little girl who had vanished, but as a young woman, laughing with companions beneath silver trees. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, not fear. Her smile had no sorrow. He was seeing a life continued. He said hoarsely, "It's remembering." The others were reeling. Talon was murmuring to himself, lips moving in some alien cadence. One of the younger hunters had completely fallen silent, arms outstretched to the sky as if welcoming something only he could feel. Another wept, not with despair, but with reverence. Visions surged again, great machines made of shadows shifting through the voids between stars, each carrying the story of a long-dead world. A choir of light sang on the surface of a liquid planet, voices harmonizing across centuries, a blind entity older than suns, weeping at the last member of his kind faded into memory. The Kawahari did not just contain memories, it absorbed identity. It was a sanctum of souls, their joys, their pains, their stories. Every person it had ever touched still lived within it. the lights like a stained glass window, and it was grieving. The air grew heavy, thick with emotion, sorrow not just ancient, but cosmic. The Kawahari was not flaunting its power, it was mourning, and it was asking to be understood. Jarrah wept openly now, tears cutting through the grime on his face. They were not intruders, they were witnesses. The jungle accepted them as they left their ruins. It did not whisper, it did not resist. The path back to the village felt shorter, the shadows less dense, as if the forest itself acknowledged the gravity of what had passed. They were not the same men who had entered. Their movements were slower now, each step thoughtful. It was as if the sliver of that ancient grief had embedded itself into their bones. Back in the village they found people waiting. Word had preceded them somehow, carried by the wind or by the jungle itself. Elders stood beside the fire pit, torches burning low. Children clung to their mothers. Questions buzzed on lips, but no one spoke. Jarrah stepped forward. He spoke not with a flourish, but with weight. His words were slow, shaped by the enormity of what he had seen. He told of the relics, of the visions, of the knowing. He spoke of the Kawahari, not as a monster or god, but as a memory made flesh. When he finished, a silence fell greater than before. Then Maraka, the oldest among them, stood. "We feared a god of death," he said, voice low and brittle, "but we met a god of memory. That night fires burned high, not to banish darkness, but to welcome understanding. Stories flowed like rivers through the village, carried on the wind and sung by children. For the first time in generations, the jungle was not feared. It was revered. Some wept, others lit lantern and sent them into the sky, believing that the light might be seen by those preserved. And when the sleep came, it brought dreams that did not frighten, but called." The following day the elders gathered beneath the sun tree, the tallest in the village, its canopy visible even from the furthest bends of the river. They spoke few words, no debate, no defiance, only the solemn understanding of what must be done. A procession was formed, not of warriors, but of rememberers, those who carried the weight of stories, of names and losses too old for records. They brought no weapons. A mother held a hand-woven basket, the thread faded by 6 generations of hands. A small child clutched a doll with missing eyes, its stitching worn thin. A young man presented a flint knife, darkened by age, passed down from his great-grandfather. Each offering was carried not as a tribute to a god, but as a memory made tangible. Jarrah walked at the front, the path familiar. As they entered the jungle, the stillness returned. Not heavy with dread, but open, receptive. The trees swayed gently, and branches leaning as if to listen. The wind breathed in and out, forward and back. Even time seemed to bend. At the clearing, the Kawahari was waiting, silent, immense, unmoving. One by one the villagers stepped forward, laying their relics upon the moss, not heaped, but placed. Each item given meaning through gesture. A carved comb, a broken drumstick, a stone etched with a child's handprint. Jarrah approached last. He held the riverstone pendant, the one bearing Mirren's name. His hands trembled as he knelt. "I brought it back," he whispered. He laid it down gently. The Kawahari's eyes shimmered, not with light, but memory. The air thickened, vibrated, and then she was there. Not a ghost, not a vision. Mirren, standing beneath the twin moon sky, surrounded by others, older. She turned and smiled. Jarrah fell to his knees. Tears spilled freely, tracing the dirt on his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away, he simply stared, breathless at the image only he could see. Mirren, whole, radiant, real in a way dreams never are. The villagers stood behind him in silence, their offerings still at their feet. No one dared speak. Some lowered their heads, others simply watched, eyes wide with reverence, unsure whether they were witnessing a miracle or something older, deeper. After a long moment, Jarrah rose. His shoulders, once heavy with grief, now seemed weightless. His face was calm, transformed. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Some memories are not for words. Some truths live only in the quiet, between breath and heartbeat, between sorrow and release. And as he walked back through the stillness, the jungle seemed to exhale. Not an ending, but something close to peace. In the weeks that followed, the Kawahari became more than a myth. It became a turning point in the tribe's identity. Children who once feared the forest now played at its edge, whispering stories into the leaves, hoping the jungle might whisper back. The elders spoke more gently, listened more closely. Even the land seemed to change. The trees stretched taller, their roots deepened, and the wind carried not just a scent, but memory. News spread. At first the other villagers came quietly, curious, cautious, unsure. A pair from the Stone River tribe arrived barefoot, hearing an obsidian flute said to play itself during eclipses. They left in silence, only to return weeks later with more. Then came the Fire Mountain folk, carrying a red-stained bowl, said to have enjoyed the wrath of volcano gods. They placed it near the clearing's edge. By morning, it was gone. Word spread further. The clearing became sacred ground. Pilgrimages followed. At solstices and eclipses, clans arrived bearing bundles of memory, love letters etched into the bark, rings carved from driftwood, a bottle of desert sand, a page torn from a forgotten journal. Humble or grand, each item was treated the same. One by one, visitors stepped forward, offering their relics in silence. The Kawahari never spoke, never moved, but when something truly remembered was placed before it, its eyes shimmered with stillness and light. Rituals grew in the seasons that followed. The villagers began to mark the passing day. One day each season set aside for remembrance. Stories were told beside the river, voices low and reverent. As night fell, names of the vanished were whispered into their fire, each one a spark sent into the dark. Children took part too. They walked barefoot into the jungle, placing small trinkets along the path. A bead, a carved button, a folded leaf. Gifts not of value but of meaning. The jungle accepted them. The stillness once feared now felt like kinship. And always, always the Kawahari remained, watching, waiting, remembering.